Welcome to the Believer's Journey. This blueprint is something I came across during my walk with God, and the blueprint is the Israelites' journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. And there are so many things along the way, so many elements, so many events, and I'm like, this lines up perfectly. Like, how does it line up so perfectly with our own walks as believers, as followers of Christ today? So take, for instance, we all start in slavery, right? Just like the Israelites started in slavery in Egypt, we start in slavery to sin. The only thing that will save us is the blood of the Lamb, right? So the Israelites put the blood of the Lamb on their doorposts, and that was the separating factor. The one thing, the one event that pulled them out of Egypt and set them on their walk of salvation, right? So the same thing applies to us. If we apply the blood of the Lamb to our lives, now we are set free, right? We now begin our walk of discipleship and salvation. The Israelites then followed the cloud by day and the fire by night. Clearly, and I'll go into it in the book, but clearly this is a symbol of the Holy Spirit. For us believers today, after we are saved by the blood of the Lamb, then we are given and we follow the Holy Spirit. He is our guide through the desert, through the wilderness. The very next thing the Israelites came across was the Red Sea. Them going through the Red Sea was a picture of baptism. Same for us today. We get saved by the blood, we follow the Holy Spirit, and we are commanded to get baptized with water. Then the Israelites receive the manna from heaven, the bread of heaven. Jesus says, I am the bread of heaven that came down. We receive and we eat of this bread every single day as believers. Then the Israelites were given water from the rock. We are commanded to believe in Jesus, and then rivers of living water will flow from us. And then the Israelites go through all these trials and temptations, and they're complaining and they're failing this test and that test, and it's a complete mess. But God is purifying for himself a people who will go in and who will take the promised land. God can't just take the slaves as is and put them in the promised land and then boom, they're just gonna cultivate that slave mentality in the promised land and it'll be worthless. So God has to purify his people and teach them how to trust him, teach them how to know him personally. Teach them how to follow his ways, how to go about the structure of his kingdom. He gives them the law, he gives them the 10 commandments, he gives them the tabernacle. All of these things is like God saying, this is my kingdom, this is how I want it to operate. Here are the instructions for it, follow it, and you will be a purified people, and then we are ready to take the promised land. So how that applies to us today is that life is full of trials and temptations and tests. Jesus came to teach us how to live, how to pass these trials, how to pass these tests. And he gave us structure on how the kingdom of heaven operates. And then he taught that to his disciples. And then his disciples were to teach that to others, who then taught that to others to the ends of the earth. Because God is purifying for himself a bride ready for the marriage supper of the Lamb. And so the 10th and final step in this pattern, in this blueprint, was the Israelites entering into the promised land. And going into this book, I thought the promised land was just going to represent heaven. You know, we go to heaven one day and everything's great. But when I really looked into it and really studied it and really prayed about it, it was like, oh no, the promised land is something completely different. It's something, it took a total different mind shift of like, oh no, that's what the promised land represents. Man, that's by far my favorite chapter, and it's by far the most like fire you up. Like, guys, we gotta do this. Guys, we gotta do this. So to wrap it all up, the believer's journey is noticing and looking at the pattern of the Israelites' journey from slavery in Egypt to the promised land, everything in between, and how that perfectly mirrors our journey as believers and followers of Christ. So if this is something that interests you, if this is something that you want to know better, if you want to dig into it, you can check out the book on www.believersjourney.org. Guys, we got the promised land to take. We got to get this. We got to get this. We got to get the right mentality. Like, the promised land is sitting there. We just don't know. We just don't know. God bless you guys. Let's go.